It's MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. All right, so today I'm going to do something slightly different. We're going to basically be story crafting or on the lore, what we already know in the story. So heads up, this is filled with spoiler alerts. I don't have anything written down. I'm always just, presenting it how I see it from my own words. So with that being said, if you haven't played Final Fantasy XIV up until this point, you might not want to watch this video because we're going to talk about the evidence that we already know that's going on in the story, and we're going to base that knowledge from the two trailers and I'm going to give my interpretations of what I think's going on, and I would like to hear your thoughts on your own theories about what's going on or what's going to happen and what's going on in the existing storyline moving forward with Shadowbringers. With that being said, let's get into the first video, which was we'll go for the the full trailer. I think this is the one I want. No, I want the extended. So that's not very extended. So, yeah, we'll go over this. It should be it, but we'll see. Alright, let me full screen this.
How many years have come and gone since that day? How many years have I waited for this moment? For the one that stood alone against the storm.
Okay, now once again, I find it interesting that on the last live letter, they told us to go through this trailer. And when we got, and let me,
for the one that stood alone.
First thing he's saying, he stood alone against the storm. And I find that interesting just within that statement alone. So take what you will out of it, but pay attention to those words. I stood alone against the storm.
Against the storm.
Now look at this. Why did they really emphasize showing the hands? Now, if you guys notice, his hand is pretty beat up. So, it's missing skin, there's blood, but they're definitely showing, right, his right hand getting ready to draw the katana. And I find this interesting that they emphasized focusing on this hand. And they did it with Gallius too. But I really find this interesting that, they wanted to show this detail.
For the one they called.
The one they called. Now that's another thing. They're referencing past tense, and we're past this point. Now, keep in mind that this is the embodiment of who we are. We are the warrior of light, right? But the warriors of light during Heaven's Ward, right, came, I think I want to say it's Heaven's Ward, came to what? Try to save their Heidelin, or their world, because it was being consumed by the darkness, or consumed by the light, sorry. There was a shard that was consumed by darkness. They've done everything to push back the darkness, and unfortunately now, as a result, their world was being consumed by the light. So the warriors of light, that's plural, meaning there was more than one, became warriors of darkness to try to come to the source, which we reside in. So we're from the source to try to, in hopes to save their world. And they were working with the Ashians to do so, to try to accomplish this feat, because for the Ashians, if they succeeded, it would have benefited them, because they're trying to raise Zodiark. So I find this very interesting that he is, like, we're referencing past tense when it should be present tense. I am the Warrior of Light, not was called the Warrior of Light.
The Warrior of Light.
Now, this is another thing I found interesting here. We're stumbling along. We've come over to the first. So we're kind of like, there's like almost like a transition of adjustments that's occurring, and we're like, it's affecting us. We're stumbling, and then of course the echo comes in. Now, the echo. When we first start our journey, we find out we have this ability called the echo. Now, the echo allows us to see past events from another's perspective. So my question now becomes, why are we experiencing the echo from our perspective? What if we're not experiencing the echo from our perspective or our past events? Because the echo's never given us that up until this point. What if we're experiencing the echo from another version of ourselves? That's a big theory of mine, because up until this point, we have no reason to believe that the abilities of the echo have been altered. And if it is our past experiences, why is it only taking effect in the first? Okay. Hold on, let me make sure my mic's not muted. Probably, no, it's not. All right. Now, interesting enough that most people associate what's going on here as a calamity. And initially I thought so as well. But I'm actually starting to wonder that the Urianger and Y'shtola in this clip might not be the Urianger and the Y'shtola from our realm. Because if we remember, if we left off, all the Scions were put into like a coma where their ether from their bodies, their initial bodies, were like taken. So it leaves, and I'll get into this with another video, but could their ether been transferred from their bodies to a copy of themselves in another, shard? Or, because we got to think, their ether was taken. Like, their actual ether was taken. They were all put in state of a coma. Why? How? All of these things become relevant. Because how do we travel from, each of the etheric shards? We're transferring ether, right? When you use fast travel in the game, you're transferring your ether, and then rematerializing. So if we're crossing over to large shards or new worlds or copies, what if we could just extract the ether and leave the physical body intact? That's another theory or question I would have, because remember, they're in a coma. So if this is who they are, if this is our Urianger and our Y'shtola, then how are they here, and what happened to their state of a coma? And I know that's going to be revealed, but it's kind of interesting to me at this point.
What sayest thou, Master Matoya? We may accept this fate, or defy it, but we cannot deny it.
Now, remember here that Urianger called Y'shtola Master Matoya. And notice in the interview, or the live letter, that most people speculated that Master Matoya, Y'shtola's new job was Black Mage because of her robes. But it's been confirmed that she's a witch. And the only witch we know is Master Matoya. So, what if this is Master Matoya's ether been transferred in Y'shtola's body to take her place to deal with this situation? Because Y'shtola, if we remember, Y'shtola was resurrected. Her ether and how she exists in our world isn't typical of, living beings. That's why we see what? Her eyes changed. Y'shtola's eyes changed during her resurrection, because her ether isn't traditionally present. It doesn't in-house the vessel more than inhabits the vessel. And because all the Scion's ether was taken from their bodies, and they're in a state of like a coma, what if Y'shtola's is like almost in a limbo effect, because she has no ether to extract? So what happens? Master Matoya goes ahead and inhabits this vessel. Just speculating, but I want to get your minds rolling.
Deny? I am not wont to run from my troubles. Until our friend returns, I will hold the line.
This town certainly has changed, and not at all for the better. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you, Minfilia.
Okay, here's another thing. Notice I talked about Y'shtola's eyes changing when we resurrected Y'shtola. And it's kind of important because we see a younger version of Minfilia in this world or in this copy. And here Minfilia is a lot younger, but her eyes have changed. And it almost reminds me exactly of the way Y'shtola's eyes are in that essence of, you know, having, you know, either the lack of ether or what's going on. There's something definitely apparent with Minfilia, with this Minfilia. And I want to say this Minfilia. This is not our Minfilia. And I'll get into that into the next video clip, but just wanted to point that out.
Greater even than the seventh
Okay, once again, right hand on katana damaged. And now another fixated moment where another right hand is being, you know, zoomed in on. And the guy that's actually called us here, the shadow, or not the guy, the shadowy figure, could be male, could be female. I honestly think this is a copy of who we are on the first. This is my whole speculation because we never see this figure's face, and what he says here is kind of, you know, amazing. It has a cryptic but yet true meaning to it. Because we notice that this voice is supposed to embody the Warrior of Light. He says specifically, when I was called the Warrior of Light. How many years have I waited for this moment? And he's narrating this, but also he's talking directly. So we know this crystal figured, or this crystal hand, was a Warrior of Light, or is a warrior, a previous Warrior of Light. But what Warrior of Light?
Calamity must be undone. If history must be unwritten, let it be unwritten. Become what you must.
Okay, there's the first video. And like I said, he's narrating the entire video. Like, if he's referencing himself as a warrior of light, right? And he's referencing standing alone against the storm. And then he's the one speaking directly in this clip, talking about undoing the things. If history must be unwritten, let it be unwritten. You know, so all of the events that's led up to this point, if we have to undo it. Now, in the beginning of this next video, I'm going to introduce another theory. So we're going to now take a look at the newest trailer in speculation or retrospect to the teaser.
Well, if it ain't the oldest joke in the book.
Had a dark night, and yet in front of him we stand as what? A dark knight. Love the symbolism there.
Over 100 bleeding years ago, that's when.
Okay, now it's kind of interesting that we see this mural of a little girl. Now notice that Minfilia. Now here's my thing. When I first saw this mural, I saw hands and I saw a spear. And of course it's a lot of light. And it almost seems like it's being projected from the little girl, right? That, okay, I'm projecting this, it's it's coming in. But Minfilia is a young girl. Why is Minfilia in this world a young girl? And why in this mural do we see a young girl? And better yet, what if the ball of light isn't being projected, but it's being stopped by the young girl? Just speculation.
In that chaotic no man's land between realms, time and space war and blend in unexpected ways. What Urianger saw.
Now you'll hear the voice in the background of the Warriors of Darkness and the leader of the Warriors of Darkness in our previous encounter speak of, what did we do wrong? We did everything that was asked of us. And Urianger is recanting, we're hearing Urianger recant what he experienced, what he saw. And time and space warped. And I find that kind of ironic because when we take a look at our previous statement from the narrator of the initial trailer, he says, if history must be unwritten, let it be unwritten. But how can you unwrite something that has already happened?
Was the future.
That's how the Sin Eaters came to be. They were once living creatures, or people, that were caught in.
Okay, so we know Void Sent are beings or people who have been caught up into the darkness. We've already had this experience with the Ashians utilizing Void Sent. But what I find interesting here, we have the opposite effect with the Sin Eaters when they got caught up in the flood of the light. And it's kind of interesting how we have parallels between the two type of creatures, but yet the same, effect that's transformed these living beings.
Path of the flood. Once the change is wrought, there is no going back.
The eternal light of these creatures has confounded us for nigh on 100 years. For each we have put down, another has risen up in its place.
Now, I find this interesting that they say it's confounded us. We hear the voice of Alphino. But here's what's interesting when we hear that voice of Alphino. Alphino is basically saying this problem's confounded us for at least 100 years. Confounded us, plural, meaning he's been there. This Alpha, that's what's led me to believe, why is this our Urianger? Why is this our Y'shtola? When this Alphino is stating it's confounded us. How would you know, how would you have known that this problem's existed for at least 100 years unless you've been there for 100 years or know that this firsthand? So, and why wouldn't it be them, has confounded them for at least 100 years? No, he says it's confounded us for at least 100 years. That's why I don't believe that these scions are initially our scions. So just, once again, we're speculating on the evidence.
Born of the self-same ether relinquished by its predecessor. That's him. That's Vorthree.
Sin Eaters are part of Yulmor's society, but they must be fed with ether. Living ether.
Now, once again, Alphino stops us when we're getting ready to intervene because of what Varnir has relayed to us. That, these Sin Eaters have to, feed off of living ether. Now, ether is the life force of the universe, right? Like if we're eating food, we're partaking of a form of ether. That's why it gives us nourishment. That's why we're able to keep existing. But like any other creature, if we don't consume, we cease to exist. So if these, maybe that's the answer or the solution, is if these beings aren't fed off of some form of ether, would they cease to exist? And not only that, we remember the Ashians, even if you defeated them, they could just transfer their etheric energy from one vessel to another. And we see that maybe that this is a reoccurring pattern within the Sin Eaters as well, that once you defeat them, they're able to take the same concept of what the Ashians do and transfer their ether into a new host.
This world's beyond saving.
Now, I kind of find this interesting because, once again, we see the mural, we see a light, but there's also a clip where the two Menphilias, I think it's right here, are facing each other. And there's such a difference in age. And are we seeing the Menphilia that we know as our Menphilia? Because remember that Menphilia stated to the Warriors of Darkness, I will do what I can to try to save your world. And maybe all of these events is our Menphilia's way of trying to restore balance. Because remember, in a lot of, different religions, that we have a yin, or we have the, form of balance. The light, the dark, the life and death scenario, and in between the two is the balance. And I think this could be a reflection of trying to restore balance and keep things in check. But is it our Menphilia becomes the question.
like those who try to save it. This world has had its fill of heroes.
Everything we did, everything we gave, what was it for?
Now, I found that part to be interesting as well, right here. First, we see the shrouded figure holding a staff, right? And then we see a radiant light. And then what happens next? It's projected onto us. And it says after that, become what you must. And now we see, lo and behold, the two Minfilias face to face.
How many years have I waited for this?
That's why if there are two Minfilias, why wouldn't there be two Arianjes? Why wouldn't there be two Y'shtolas? Why wouldn't there be two Warriors of Light?
This moment. For the one possessed of her blessing. For you.
Through prayer and sacrifice, the will of the star was made manifest.
I'm sorry, I can only...
Okay, that's kind of an interesting statement, right?
Sorry, I can only assume I misheard. But I'm sorry.
The will of the star was made manifest. Through prayer and sacrifice.
Through prayer and sacrifice.
The will of the star was made.
The will of the star was made manifest.
Manifest.
I'm sorry, I can only assume I misheard. But it sounded an awful lot like you were implying both so...
Now, once again, we see cave paintings, and we see a separation or a union of some sort between light and dark that embodies Hydaelyn and Zodiark. Because here we see the being as one, right? We see the being as one entity. And then the next clip, we see them divided.
But it sounded an awful lot like you were...
Now they're divided. They've been taken apart. So Zodiark and Hydaelyn were initially what? Were initially one. And then separated to become what? Halves of each other. Just like yin and yang, that are always two separate entities, but when they're brought together, they represent the balance or the whole.
Implying both Zodiark and Hydaelyn are not gods, but...
They are gods after a fashion, yes. The eldest and most powerful of primals.
Now, it's kind of interesting. They are gods in a fashion. They're the oldest and strongest of primals. So if they were separated or made to be summoned in this fashion, Is that what made them primals? And because they are primals, if they were divided, if they were one being or one entity at one time, maybe they were a god or a deity. And because of this separation, it's taken, that status from deity to primal. I'm just speculating, but it's interesting nevertheless. And why does Solus have reason to lie? He has what purpose would he have? Because remember that La Brea said, I need calamities to resurrect the one true God. And he says Hydaelyn is the parasite that needs to be burned out if there's going to be balance restored. So La Brea, in our first encounter with the ultimate weapon, is making very crucial statements that would indicate that we need to release Zodiark, free Zodiark, and we need to have Hydaelyn and him confront each other to what? Reunite into the one true God. And I find that to be maybe the case, and maybe why, we see the confrontations between the Ashians and, everything that we do. This is why, they're confronting us. So just once again, speculation. All right. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I just wanted to do a stream on this. I'm sorry I didn't answer any questions today or, look at my chat. I did want to go over these video trailers, and I just wanted to have it present for, people to come and check it out for future reference. Think about it. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think? For all the evidence that's been presented up until this point, what's your story crafting? What's your theories on what's going to happen with Shadowbringers and how that relates to us, the new Warriors of Darkness? All right. Once again, I'm Mr. Craven. This is Mystics MMOs. As always, have a nice day.